Hey there, and thanks for stopping by to check out my channel. Now the sun is setting right now, which is going to give us perfect conditions for tonight's video. And if you're clicking on this, I'm guessing you're probably in the same boat that I am around night vision. You want a night vision setup of your own, but the barrier to entry is giving you a number of questions that you've got to answer before you pull the trigger. Things like, which unit is right for me? Do you want a single tube or a dual tube? White phos or green phos? Laser on your weapon for passive or active aiming? These are all things that have gone through my mind and have been a stumbling block for me to pull my trigger on my own setup. So in this video, we've got a really slick setup here from the boys over at KJA Night Vision. They've hooked me up with the helmet. They've hooked me up with the dual tube setup here. They've also given me a laser to run on my rifle so that I can run through passive and active shooting and bring the experience to you around my first time with a night vision setup, what that looks like, what it feels like. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll kind of have an idea of what it's like to get into night vision. At this point, or prior to filming this, I have no experience with dual tubes, not even single tubes, just long-range clip-ons that you've seen on the channel. So with a setup like this is much closer range. This is what you're going to use for scanning at night, things like driving. So with these dual tubes, one of the first things I did out here on the range was throw them on and drive the four-wheeler around. And I tell you what, it is super cool to be able to use night vision. So night vision, it's a true image. It's a real image that you're seeing with your eye. So you're able to drive. You think about thermal. With thermal being a digital image, there can be a lag there. There can be calibration. So driving or looking through glass is not going to be possible with thermal, whereas night vision makes it very, very possible. So far, that's maybe one of the coolest things. Also, you throw the nods on, you look up at the sky, and there are so many stars. So you just think about all the cool things that you don't even realize are going on out there. Night vision is going to give you the ability to see that. Planes flying across the sky, satellites, stars. Man, night vision, it is just as cool and just as much fun as I expected it to be. So the plan for this video, I'm going to chat about the helmet setup I have here. I'm going to chat about kind of my experience getting it set up for my head and getting out to use it, because there's a number of things that I found when I put this on for the first time. We're going to show some shooting content where I'm going to run passive and active drills. I have a recorder here on the eyepiece that I'm able to show you exactly what I see through my right lens. So you're going to be able to shoot with me first person to get an idea of what it's like to fire each of these rifles with each of the different aiming solutions. And then at the end of the video, we're going to wrap up with a summary of my experience. So if you like the sounds of it, stick around. This is going to be super fun. So as I went into this, I had a number of questions. Number one, sizing the helmet. How do I get the correct size helmet? Do I want green phos or white phos? Which tubes do I want? What mount do I want on the head up? These are all questions that I was able to run by KJA Night Vision, and they were able to get me hooked up. I measured my head one time, sent them the measurement, boom, they had a perfectly sized Team Windy helmet. Told them the experience that I wanted. They recommended the setup that I have here, and we'll go into the specs in just a second. Sent that out. So for someone that's new to night vision, KJA made the process so simple. I got a super slick setup, ton of communication there, and I couldn't do it without them. Check out KJA and make sure you use my code MULLETSNVG, as that's going to save you 5% on a goggle purchase. First up, let's talk about the helmet, the mount, the goggles, the accessories that all have to work together to give you a solid experience with your night vision setup. This is one of the pieces that I was the most nervous about getting into. How do you pair everything together and make it work? So the setup I'm running here is going to be a Team Windy medium carbon bump helmet. So the first debate I had was, do I want a ballistic helmet or do I want a bump helmet? Now that I've had the experience with the bump helmet, I tell you what, that is fine for me. You can get into these bump helmets for a much more affordable price than you can a ballistic helmet. Now certainly if you're worried about two-way action or you're on a two-way range, then ballistic would make sense. But for someone like me that's just out here using night vision primarily for sport and for fun, the bump helmet is the way that I would go if I was investing my own money. So this is a Team Windy, very comfortable helmet. So with KJA, all I had to do was measure the circumference of my head and send them the measurement, and then they were able to size this helmet perfectly. The other thing on this helmet, so on the back side of it, it has kind of a tension mechanism here with a little clamp that you can twist, and that's going to allow you to cinch the helmet down. Now what I realized, you want some tension in this helmet when it fits on your head. You don't want it to be loose because these goggles are actually very heavy, especially when you tip them forward. They're in that kind of running position there, you tip them back up, your center of gravity is going to change. So you want the helmet to fit quite snug. I use the chin strap to make sure the helmet is mounted secure. I've used this helmet now for several hours throughout filming, and I can say it's very, very comfortable the way it's set up. So the mount on this, so you have your Team Windy helmet, then you're gonna need to add a mount for the goggles. So the mount here is gonna be from SOTAC, I believe. So this mount is obviously going to attach to the helmet. And then when you tip your goggles down, it's gonna give you adjustment. They're gonna slide in or out, up and down. You also are gonna have the ability to push the goggles in or out based on where your eyes are at, not only to mention the focus. Now, the thing I really like about this mount is it's gonna allow you to push up without any kind of mechanism there, but then they lock. So then to push them down, you hit the little button and they tip down. So they lock in the working position and you just push them up and boom, they're there. And again, when they're mounted like this, they are pretty front heavy, so you can kind of push these up and out of the way to change your center of gravity on that. But I tell you what, dual tubes like this were definitely heavier than I expected when I put these on the first time. So this mount, it's certainly quite tight. There's very little movement in that. It's very, very tight. So that is one thing I was nervous about, is how secure would that be? You can also remove the goggles. There's just a little clamp here. Now your goggles are out, say for storage, or maybe you're gonna be in the daytime, you don't want them on your helmet, you can easily remove them. And then they just clip right in. There's a dovetail there you slide them into. They actually do have a retention mechanism here on the helmet that you attach to the goggles. That way, if they happen to fall off, they don't hit the ground. But for filming here, I'm not running the retention. So this mount from SOTAC, very, very solid. Now the actual tubes themselves, night vision, man, there's all kinds of specs. These, from what I understand, the specs would be a TCN VB. They have anvil glass and L3 tubes. These are a white phos. And I tell you what, I've been able to use white phos side by side with green phos in my clip-ons. I've been able to use these white phos goggles. Man, for me, white phos is the way to go. I understand it's more expensive, it's a premium product, but man, the image is so much easier to look at over time. So my vote is gonna be white phos here. I wanted to run dual tubes just because I wanted that experience. And I tell you what, the dual tube, it's awesome. Now, obviously it's gonna be higher cost, but I have kind of swung one of these out of the way just to give myself the experience of a single tube, and it's usable. You get used to it, but man, dual tube is amazing. That is just such an image for you to be able to use. So these are a very, very nice unit. Again, L3 white phos tubes, anvil glass. Man, the experience, obviously I'll roll in some footage here so you can see them, but the clarity is just unbelievable. When it's a full moon night, there's a lot of ambient light out, you can see amazingly well. These units, something I was afraid of or nervous about would be white light or red light, say brakes off of my four-wheeler. They seem to handle it just fine, so I assume these are auto-gated to protect themselves. But you know, even if you happen to look at a street light or something, the units seem to be fine. Battery life has been really, really solid. I've run these now for probably 8 to 10 hours total on one single battery that slides in right here on the front. Now you'll notice on this unit, I do have another piece on the eye here. This is a recorder. And this unit you actually can record through. So that's what you're gonna see through my eyepiece when I'm looking around. It's this recorder. This thing is slick. Gonna give you that first person view. On the back of the helmet, you're gonna see a battery pack. Now this battery pack is just for the recorder, but I like it because it's a little bit of extra weight. You know, I've seen in other videos on YouTube about counterbalance, 100% that's legit. Without any counterbalance here, these are very heavy, very fatiguing on your neck. You start to feel it after a bit of time. Now, something else I realized that I needed to have after my first time out on the range. So with the night vision, you're gonna notice that your field of view is quite small. It's not what you're used to with your eyes. It's good, you're constantly having to move your head around, or if you're doing something up close, you can look under your goggles. This right here is an absolute must, and that is going to be, this is a little mod light that's on a set of Picatinny here. This is the tri-arc rail, so you can actually move this mod light around. You can turn this puppy on. You're able to dim it down if you do a double tap. This thing is an absolute must for administrative tasks up close. So what I noticed, your goggles, you're actually gonna focus them at some distance, and then say up close is gonna be very, very blurry. So loading mags, you're either doing that by feel or you flip the goggles up and out of the way, and I was using a white light. This helmet mounted light is unbelievable. So if you get into a setup like this, make sure you budget and plan to run. In this case, little mod light. I mean, this thing is just amazing the way that you're able to change the head out. It's got a couple of different functions. It's priced quite well. Shout out to Mod Light for sending this out for me to add to my helmet. So that's going to be my helmet setup. Again, a little bit of getting used to, but once everything pairs together, you just throw it on your head and it works beautifully. Now let's talk about the shooting experience. So certainly once your nods are down, it definitely changes what you're seeing. It changes the look and feel of putting those rounds down range. So with goggles like this, it's a relatively short range solution. So this is going to be my MR556 11-inch, and then this is going to be my HM Defense 300 Blackout integrally suppressed. So I felt like these shorter AR type rifles designed to engage targets out to, maybe 200 yards would be the perfect move for running my goggles. And I tell you what, it is crazy fun. Now the debate, I'm sure many of you have seen it, active aiming versus passive aiming. So when you have night vision goggles, there's two choices. So active aiming is where you're actually going to be using an IR device to shine down range to aim your target. So in this case, the boys over at KJA sent out this SMS. It's an HFXC. So this is going to be a weapon mounted laser. So this unit right here is going to be an all-in-one. I decided to put it up here on the handguard of my HM Defense 300 Blackout. So that way when I'm down behind the rifle, let me flip my nods down. So when I'm down behind the rifle, say in this position, you can actually look right up over the top at where your laser is, point it at the target, squeeze the trigger, and make an impact. So all I did to zero it, I have this is the Rotopoint Pillager. So for the 300 Blackout subs, I have this 45-degree red dot zeroed, something like, 20 yards or something. All I did to zero this was align the laser during the day to my red dot downrange. So it's super simple to zero it. And again, you're not doing precision shooting here. So basically, I zeroed the laser during the day to my red dot, and then when night comes, you're able to flip those nods down, and if you're active aiming, you shine IR downrange, point at your target, squeeze the trigger. So with that, you look over the top, you could hip fire it if you want, you can do kind of a low shoulder. Understand there's multiple different methods of active aiming. And I tell you what, active aiming is crazy fun. So active aiming is actually what I prefer doing. It's just super fun to have the ability to hold your rifle, shine your laser down range, and engage targets. So for this, we're just going to get on the rifle, chamber around, and then I'm going to power the laser. We're empty. All right. Alrighty, that is pretty fun. 2/3. Full size. All right, we're out. Go. Let's get on the full size. 2/3. That's it. Now, certainly those of you that are in this game, or I'm sure you've seen other videos online around active aiming, makes you visible to anyone else with night vision. So keep that in mind. Maybe active aiming is something you would do inside of a building versus outside like this, because if you shine an ice out here, somebody with night vision from miles around up in the sky, they're going to see you. So while it's super fun and I actually prefer doing it, just kind of at the range plinking, active aiming is an absolute blast. Tactically, probably not the best move if that's something you're worried about. So that's how this setup is configured. Now this laser, this HFXC, this is like a $300 unit. So when KJA sent this out to me, I had actually never heard of it, but I tell you what, so far this unit has worked really, really well. So that's active aiming. So passive aiming is something probably that makes a little more sense in a tactical type scenario, because you're able to aim, you're looking down the sight, let me dump the magnifier here, on the unit using your nods, And when you aim down the sight with your nods, you're not giving away your signature to everyone else that might have nods. So passive aiming obviously would make sense outside if you're in a scenario where other people have nods and you're worried about giving away your position. For fun, man, it takes a lot more practice. So what I realized with my nods on, when I look down the sight, even in the night vision setting, the reticle looks great. But what I realized, this EOTech, number one for me, is the move for passive aiming. The nods are really easy to align, even with just the standard height. The reticle is very usable, but this is the EXPS 3-4, so it has the BDC dots. I found that challenging. Those BDC dots just turn into a line, and it made it hard for me to see my aiming point, which would be the top dot, and the target downrange. Now, I did push this out to distance. I'll show some footage here, but when I shot this as far as I could, I was at about 150 yards on a full-size IPSC, and I was able to make those impacts. The cool thing about night vision is sometimes you're able to see a little bit of a spark where your bullet lands, which is dangerous if you're shooting in very dry conditions. But sometimes there will be a little spark or a flash of light that you can identify where your misses are quite easily. Once you get on the target though, man, you send it, and again, you're able to see your impacts in many cases through the night vision because you get that light splash off of the target. Let's just run some passive aiming drills here with the first mag. So I've got a 2/3 IPSC set up there at about 50 to 60 yards, and then a full size set up there at about 100. So we'll just, let's start by engaging maybe that 2/3. Full size. Two-thirds. All right, I tell you what, that is crazy fun. Next up, I wanted to give you a different angle and maybe just run through a couple of mag changes just to kind of get a feel for the kit in the night vision. It's definitely a different feel. Your field of view is quite narrow. You know, it's certainly black around kind of the tubes here. Let's just give it a go. We'll engage the same targets, and I'll start with the small mag first here. So again, we're running passive, so 2/3 IPSC. Full size. Pack there. All right, we're empty. Let's go back on the full size. Two-thirds. We're getting nice and hot. Back on the 2/3. Full size. Ooh, got a little glow there in the night vision. That's kind of fun, huh? I've moved back a bit. I'm probably in the ballpark of 150 yards to the full size IPSC. I just wanted to push a little bit of distance and see what it's like to run the EOTech with some distance. So with that, let's let her rip. Here we go. All right, so full size IPSC, passive aiming. There we go. So had to get my hold right, and then we connected quite a few times there. So for me, passive aiming, it's gonna take more practice. All I did here, zero the EOTech just like I normally would. There's no zero shift through the nods. So basically I zero this puppy at 50 yards and then hold the 50-yard dot center mass on that torso, and you get the same performance as you would during the daytime. So for me, when it comes down to passive versus active aiming, I find active extremely fun. Shining that laser at the target and just sending rounds is an absolute blast. Obviously, you'll see that in the content. Maybe for a tactical type scenario, or if you're worried about giving away your position, passive aiming is where it's at, where you look down the sights on the unit. So as I get into night vision, I definitely see a place for both styles. I definitely see a need to add our light and laser on your rifle. And then I also see the need to get something like an EOTech or a red dot that you can use for passive. So I also used those are Griffin red dots there on the pillager, and those worked fine actually with the night vision. So they're very functional. They just have a single dot in them. I tell you what, the little bit that I use this EOTech, I really like how the EOTech performs through the nods. At this point, you've got an idea of what it was like to configure this setup. You've got an idea of passive versus active aiming, and you've seen some footage of me sending rounds downrange through the actual night vision. You've seen me drive with the night vision. You've seen me look at stars with night vision. So let's just sum it up. So I tell you what, the night vision is crazy fun. It's actually probably more fun than I expected. It's just really neat to be out here in the dark and have the ability to see what's going on. Certainly with night vision, the more ambient light that's out, the more you can see. I enjoy shooting on nights with big moons. I also have to do that for my night vision camera. So I enjoy trying to time night vision with full moon, which comes once a month. So that's one thing I've learned about night vision shooting. The other thing I learned about the nods, man, they definitely are a little bit nose heavy. So you have to make sure to configure your helmet correctly so that you don't get fatigued in the neck. Certainly the more you use them, the more comfortable they'll be. At this point, I've got several nights with these. So I have, probably 8 to 10 hours under this helmet with these nods. And that's the experience that I'm speaking to. I realize you have to have a helmet mounted white light to be able to do administrative tasks down close. Also realized there's not going to be a perfect focus point. You're either going to be focused far away or up close. But night vision, it's hard to explain kind of the depth of the view, also the smaller field of view. So it really takes some getting used to. Things that I stumbled with initially, loading magazines, walking around. So the ground out here is quite rocky. Walking around out here was trippy when I first put the nods on. You spend time with them, you'll get used to it, and then it becomes very, very natural. You'll find yourself looking up under the nods quite frequently. So when you flip them down, you can then look up or down below and do things up close while you still have your night vision on. So that is something that took me a while to perfect, but once I did, very, very natural. The other thing that I've learned, man, something like white phos with a really, really clean tube, it just makes the experience so enjoyable. Certainly green phos or lower spec tubes you can get into, a little bit more affordable price point, but you have the ability, if you can, save up, buy once, cry once, and I believe that the return will be there in that experience. There's definitely digital night vision out there. I've used various forms of that, but man, I tell you what, a clean, nice white phos tube like this is really, really unbelievable. So far, I've had a ton of fun. Shout out to KJA for their help in putting this video together. I couldn't do it without the demo unit they've sent out. Certainly after I've used it, now I'm trying to figure out, do I add my own night vision, because it is so fun. It's also more fun if you can find buddies to get into it with you, come out here at night, with your buddies, shoot around. But if you got buddies to get into night vision with, it's an absolute ton of fun. You can hike with it, you can drive around with it, you can shoot with it. There's a ton of advantages to using night vision. So thank you to KJA for giving me this experience. Make sure you use code MULLETSNVG, and that's going to save you 5% off. Now with that, let me know in the comments down below, what did you think about this video? What else do you want to see me do with my night vision setup here? Is there other things you want to do in content, maybe more drills or more shooting you want to see me do? Let me know. I'd love to hear it. Also, if you enjoyed this video, help me grow this channel. Like it, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you're in line for my next video drop. Thanks for watching.